Johnny Talk Sports here, and I am super excited for the return of college football. It's been a long off season and only 10 more days until college football is back. There are two games on August 24th, which I will make my predictions for next week, either Sunday or Monday. So look for it on one of those 2 days. But the agenda for today, the preseason top 25. Well, my preseason top 25. The Johnny Talk Sports preseason top 25. Now, the coaches poll was released a couple weeks ago, and the Associated Press poll is probably going to be released on Monday of next week. So I thought it'd be fitting to release my preseason top 25. At number one, of course, is the Clemson Tigers, the defending national champions. They're returning Trevor Lawrence, and they're bringing back a decent amount of starters, despite losing quite a bit of defensive talent to the NFL. Dexter Lawrence, Colin Farrell, Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant to the NFL, even losing star slot receiver Hunter Renfrow to the NFL. They're still bringing back a decent amount of starters, especially on offense. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, who I think should have been a Heisman finalist last year with 20 plus touchdowns. You're bringing back Justin Ross and T. Higgins, two receivers that stepped up in 2018, especially in the college football playoff. Number two, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. They're bringing back Tua Tagovailoa, who is the co-favorite to win the Heisman at this point, along with Trevor Lawrence. And Alabama is always going to be a national championship contender as long as Nick Saban is wearing the headset on game day. And they always reload talent year after year. Although five-star running back recruit Trey Sanders is going to miss the 2019 season with a torn ACL injury. Now, are we set up for Alabama versus Clemson, round 5? Or could some other teams outside these two possibly challenge these teams? Like the number 3 team, the Georgia Bulldogs. The Georgia Bulldogs are going to be led by Jake Fromm, a quarterback. And I think Georgia is going to have the best offensive line in college football. They're going to be the biggest, one of, if not the biggest offensive lines in college football by size. And if the offensive line can protect Jake Fromm, I think Georgia could easily get to the college football playoff. And could they be the only team that can challenge Alabama? Now, if we look at the last 2 games that Alabama and Georgia have played each other, Georgia has had the lead against Alabama for 59 minutes in each of those games. Well, in the national championship game 2 years ago, they led almost the entire way, or at least tied with them. And in the SEC championship game, Georgia led Alabama all the way to the wire until about the last 2 minutes when Jalen Hurts had to bail out Tua Tagovailoa, who left the game with an injury. Now, there's no more Jalen Hurts for Alabama. If Tua Tagovailoa, if he suffers an injury, the backup quarterback, Mac Hollins, can he bail out Alabama? If it's the SEC championship game, can he bail them out? That's the big question. That's why I think Georgia is the one team that can beat Alabama for the SEC championship. At number 4 are the Oklahoma Sooners. And the Oklahoma Sooners have gone from Baker Mayfield to Kyler Murray to now Jalen Hurts. It seems like Oklahoma is turning into transfer quarterback university. I think Tate Martell is probably going to be next because he lost the starting job with the Miami Hurricanes. Now, Oklahoma is returning 9 defensive starters from 2018, but can they even improve? Can the defense improve? Because Oklahoma's defense has been lackluster in recent memory, at least for as long as I can remember. And is Oklahoma the Big 12 favorites? Because Jalen Hurts is going to be under center for the Oklahoma Sooners. And can Jalen Hurts put up the numbers that Baker Mayfield put up, that Kyler Murray put up? This Oklahoma season it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts and how he performs. Because he's going to have to perform. Because Jalen Hurts is used to having a defense in Alabama's backing him up. But with Oklahoma's defense being lackluster. He's going to have to step it up, probably even throwing up 40 points a game, like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Number 5, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes, and it's the dawn of a new day at The Ohio State University. It's the first season in the post-Urban Meyer era. Ohio State does return 9 defensive starters, including Chase Young, who was projected to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft in 2020. So what kind of season could we expect for Ohio State? Could we expect a 12-0 Ohio State team that wins the Big Ten, gets the college football playoff? Or are we going to see the same old for Ohio State the last 2 seasons? Will they meet their same fate and losing to an unranked opponent by 29, 31 points? Because Ohio State, they had some close battles last year with Nebraska, Maryland, even TCU, where Ohio State had to come back in the second half. Number 6, I have the Florida Gators. And Florida is one of those teams that are getting a lot of preseason hype, especially with how last season ended with a big win in the Peach Bowl against Michigan. It's year 2 of the Dan Mullen era, and Felipe Franks is entering his junior season. And can he rise to the occasion? Can he take that next step as the Florida Gators quarterback? And that includes beating Georgia. Can they finally even compete against Georgia? Because Florida has not had good luck with Georgia in recent memory. Number 7, I have the Texas Longhorns. And the Texas Longhorns, they are getting preseason recognition as well. A lot of preseason hype. Is this the time that Texas is actually back? It's a question that's been asked for the last 3 to 4 seasons. Are the Longhorns back? And every time we see that Texas gets a lot of preseason hype on whether or not they're back. But then it turns into losing an early game in the regular season. So a big matchup that I'm looking forward to for these Texas Longhorns is week 2 against the LSU Tigers. And that's going to be a huge statement on whether or not Texas is back or not. Number 8, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, Notre Dame is fresh off a college football playoff appearance, and they're returning Ian Book at quarterback, and they're returning 4 of their 5 offensive line starters from 2018. But their big test of the season is week 3 on the road against the Georgia Bulldogs, and we'll know if Notre Dame can repeat their history from last year or if it's just another one-year wonder for a while. Okay, number 9, the LSU Tigers. Now, this is Joe Burrow's senior season. But can they be competitive against Alabama this season? LSU is always expected to win 9, 10 games. But they can't seem to be competitive against Alabama. LSU's defense is always expected to be good. LSU always has a good defense against Alabama. Pretty decent defense. Defense keeps them in the game. But their offense just can't score points. We've already addressed that LSU and Texas have a big matchup in week 2. For the first time in a while in college football, week 2 has some good matchups. And a second week 2 matchup is going to be big. Involves our number 10 team here. That's the Texas A&M Aggies. Texas A&M picked up some momentum at the end of the 2018 season. And could Texas A&M be the only team that can challenge Clemson? Is Texas A&M the only team that's standing in Clemson's way of getting back to the college football playoff? And are they SEC West contenders? I know that Jimbo Fisher has high expectations for Texas A&M. Or college football has high expectations for Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, especially with all that money he was given. But Texas A&M, they did pick up momentum at the end of 2018, beating LSU in that epic 7 overtime game. They were competitive against Clemson last year. If maybe 1 or 2 things go differently in that game, maybe Texas A&M pulls off that upset. Number 11, I have the Michigan Wolverines. Now, this is Shea Patterson's senior season. Now, I'm just going to get to the point here with Michigan. They need to beat Ohio State, and they're desperate to beat Ohio State. If they're going to beat Ohio State, it has to be this year. Because Ohio State, they are at a little bit of a low point right now with Ryan Day as the new head coach. and all the controversy that was centered around Ohio State last year with the Urban Meyer scandal. And you're returning not only Shea Patterson, you're returning a receiving core of Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, and Tariq Black. And also you have 4 of your 5 offensive lineman starters from 2018 returning as well. So if you want to beat Ohio State, it has to be this year. Number 12, I have the Washington Huskies. They're being led by new quarterback Georgia transfer Jacob Eason. And are they the Pac-12 favorites despite only returning one defensive starter, and that's Miles Bryant? Because I think the Pac-12 is going to be a 3-team race between Washington, Oregon, and Stanford. Number 13, I have the Auburn Tigers. And yes, I'm going a little bit quickly here because I don't want to take too much of your time. Auburn, they have a quarterback battle between Joey Gatewood, Bo Nix, and Malik Willis. Now, the thing going into this season for Auburn, they have tough road games against Texas A&M, Florida, and LSU. And to make matters worse, Gus Malzahn may end up being on the hot seat at this point. But Auburn is returning 7 starters on defense. And they have a big matchup week 1 against Oregon. So if Auburn can get past Oregon, I think it could be momentum for Auburn. But if they end up losing to Oregon, Auburn can end up falling 6-6 this season. Number 14, while we're on the topic, the Oregon Ducks. This is Justin Herbert's senior season. And most of last season's starters are returning, which so many of them are returning, they could end up sneaking to the college football playoff. Because most of the returning stars from Oregon last year are returning this season. So this could be a special season for the Ducks. And Justin Herbert is a maybe Heisman contender at this point. He could have easily been the number 1 pick in last year's NFL draft if he decided to come out. But the fact that he didn't come out makes me speculate that he came back for this reason, because I think if Oregon ends up sneaking to the college football playoff, we could get like a press conference from Justin Herbert, or at least where Justin Herbert is interviewed throughout the pre-college football playoff hype process about how, maybe like a media day or something, about how he came back because he expected that this would be something special for the Ducks. And I think Oregon could be that team that could fly under the radar. Number 15, the UCF Knights. They have the 1-2 punch of their running game in McCray and Killings Jr. returning. And they have Notre Dame transfer Brandon Wimbush going to be under center. And could they finish the regular season undefeated again? They do have a big matchup against Stanford early in the season. But even if UCF does go undefeated, it's not going to be enough to get to the college football playoff, which I think is messed up for only a 14 playoff. An 18 playoff with giving the highest group of 5 team an automatic bid in the college football playoff. UCF could get an opportunity to prove themselves if they had an 18 playoff. Let them prove themselves against Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, or whoever. Number 16, Virginia Tech. Now, this might be one of the questionable ones in my top 25. But I think Virginia Tech's going to have a much better season than last year. Could Justin Fuente be on the hot seat at this point for Virginia Tech? Because Virginia Tech, they had a unrealistic season for Virginia Tech football. Can they get back to relevance? Because there is upperclassmen leadership on defense for Virginia Tech, and they're being led by one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinators in the game in Bud Foster. So I think Virginia Tech is going to turn it around, and I think they're going to have a great season this year. Number 17, a team that flew under the radar, coming off an 11-win season in 2018, Army. Kelvin Hopkins Jr. is returning for his senior season. And Army, they had an 11-win season last year. And they almost beat Oklahoma. They took Oklahoma to overtime. That Oklahoma team that made the college football playoff, they took that team to overtime. And they're going to get a chance to prove themselves against Michigan, a team that some may speculate that Michigan can make the college football playoff. So Army will get the chance to prove themselves against Michigan this season. lot of good non-conference matchups this season. Number 18, the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now there's no more Trace McSorley under center for the Nittany Lions. They do have a daunting October ahead, and there's only 10 returning stars on offense and defense put together. So this could easily be a rebuild year for Penn State. But I think Penn State should at least get to start off in the top 25. But we could see Penn State maybe take a step back this season. Number 19, Iowa State, the Cyclones. Could they be an under the radar playoff contender? We do see from time to time a team that flies under the radar in the college football playoff. We've seen Washington in the college football playoff. We've seen Notre Dame in the college football playoff. Even Georgia's been in the college football playoff. Went to the national championship game. Brock Purdy is a dark horse Heisman contender. And the Cyclones are being led on defense by Jaquan Bailey for his senior season with 8 sacks last season. That led the team in returning starters. Number 20, the Syracuse Orange. Like Texas A&M, are they one of Clemson's only challenges in 2019? Because Syracuse also played Clemson close. But you got to give in to the fact that Trevor Lawrence left the game with a concussion. And Chase Bryce, the third-string quarterback, had to finish that game for him. There's only 12 returning starters on offense and defense. And they're coming off a 2018 season with a 10-win season. And there's going to be a new quarterback for the Orange in 2019. Most likely Tommy DeVito. Coming in at number 21, the Utah Utes. Now, this could be a team that maybe could be deserved to be ranked a little bit higher, but I think Utah, they could be maybe that team that could surprise me and win the Pac-12 because they are looking to avenge their Pac-12 championship game loss from last season. I know I said earlier that I think the Pac-12 is going to be a 3-team race between Washington, Oregon, Stanford. I kind of lied there. I think Utah could be in the mix. Maybe Washington State could be in the mix as well. Washington State could be a dark horse. But they have an excellent number of stars returning, including quite the depth on defense. And it involves senior leadership. So Utah, they could end up avenging their Pac-12 loss by being a dark horse to win the Pac-12 conference. It wouldn't surprise if Utah did win this Pac-12. But I think Utah is flying a little bit under the radar. Now that I look at this ranking, I think maybe Utah could maybe be 18 or 17, maybe even the top 15, based off of the hype that Utah could end up getting throughout this season. Number 22, the Wisconsin Badgers. Now the Badgers are returning Heisman Trophy contender Jonathan Taylor, who had 2,194 yards and 16 touchdowns in 2018. But there is a quarterback battle between freshman Graham Moretz and junior Jack Cohn. And their toughest games this season are on the road at Ohio State and Nebraska. So their 2 toughest games are on the road. Number 23, another Big Ten team, Michigan State. 5 offensive line starters returning. Your main 5 offensive line starters from 2018 are returning in 2019 for the Spartans. They did have the number 1 rush defense 2018, and they are bringing back a decent number of starters from that number 1 statistical rush defense. But they do have a grueling schedule in October. Now, Michigan State, they had an off season, but Michigan State often has an off season, and then they surprise everyone. We've seen Michigan State make the college football playoff one year. Could we see it again? They're also bringing back senior quarterback Brian Lewerke, who did miss some time with an injury. Rocky Lombardi did take some snaps under center throughout a couple games last season. So Michigan State could be a team that flies under the radar. So we've got 3 Big Ten teams in a row in my top 25. Number 24, Nebraska. Now I've already talked about Nebraska. They're getting a lot of preseason hype. They're one of those teams. Despite coming off back-to-back 4-8 seasons, they're getting a lot of hype with year 2 in the Scott Frost era. And they did pick up momentum. Even though they did finish 4-8, their 4-8 is nothing to play with. It's nothing to take lightly. They could have been a 7-5, 8-4 team, and they're able to finish games. But they do have a tough road against Colorado week 2. They get Ohio State and Wisconsin at home this year, which could pay dividends to Nebraska. I've talked about Nebraska. I did a separate video on them. If you want to take a look at it, it's there. It's one of the newest videos out there. Number 25, the Stanford Cardinal. Now, they have a tough schedule to begin the season, going against Northwestern and UCF within the first couple weeks of the season. They always seem to be consistent top 25 team in college football. Now, the question is, I'm looking at David Shaw, the head coach for Stanford. I'm wondering why he hasn't had an NFL job yet, or at least got an offer for an NFL team. I think David Shaw may end up leaving for an NFL job at the end of this season. So that was my top 25, my preseason top 25. Now, teams we can see in the top 25 at some point this season: Houston, Utah State. Those are 2 group of 5 teams I think are going to have good seasons. They're going to get chances to prove themselves against the big boys of college football at some point this season. I think TCU can get in the top 25. South Carolina maybe, but South Carolina I think has the toughest schedule in college football this season. Minnesota could overachieve this season. Virginia could be a surprise team with Bryce Perkins returning at quarterback. Washington State with an FCS transfer that beat Washington State in 2016. So Washington State, at least I think that this quarterback, Gage Gerland, I think his name is, that beat Washington State early in his college football career. So he's now going to take part in this air raid offense for Mike Leach. So Washington State could be a surprise team. So that was my preseason top 25. Next week, predictions for the 2 games on August 24th, Miami and Florida, and Arizona and Hawaii. I'll probably also make my Heisman Trophy prediction. Also, a prediction that video will probably be the 4 teams I think will be in the college football playoff. So stay tuned for that. Like, share, and subscribe. And I am looking forward to the beginning of the 2019 college football season. I hope you are as well.